Greetings, everyone. Darnell Self here. I'll be hosting and facilitating this evening's estate planning webinar. Appreciate you all being on. I'm actually here in my home office here in Maryland. I guess not my home office, just my basement. But I'm excited to have you guys get this information this evening. And more importantly, thank the person who invited you to check out this webinar. They thought enough about you to do so. And we all know that most of us don't have any type of estate planning or last will and testament, and I'm sure we all know the value in getting it. But tonight, I'm joined by a few of my colleagues, two who are attorneys and business partners and folks that I've had a relationship with now for a long time. Both of them have 30 plus years of experience as practicing attorneys. And so I'm excited about all of us being empowered with information. My mother used to say, if you know better, you ought to do better. Most of us just don't know better. Well, tonight you will. And I'm truly excited about you all getting this information. So without any further ado, we're going to get right into our estate planning session this evening. If you did invite someone to get this information because you care enough about them to make sure that they have everything in order, go ahead and send out a reminder text and just let them know that this is going on. And again, if you are checking out this information, thank the person. Don't forget to thank them for inviting you, because I believe by the end of this session, this free session, by the way, and I know how much these attorneys charge per hour. And so this certainly could be a fee, but we're just glad that they have the hearts and the desire to give back and to share with all of us the information that they've been blessed to not just learn, but to help so many other people being empowered with getting their estate planning done and their will preparation. And so without any further ado, I'm going to go out to two attorney friends of mine who are, again, I've had a privilege to work with now for years, and excited about them sharing with you all estate planning made easy for you and your family. We're going to go out to Wayne Hassey and Mr. Mike Fiffick. We appreciate you, gentlemen, for being on. Thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us tonight, going over estate planning, and I'll turn it over to you.
Well, thanks, Darnell, for the wonderful introduction. Brian, thanks for the invitation to join everybody here this evening to talk about something that's near and dear to our hearts. It's always a pleasure to appear anywhere that Melissa Peters is, because you always know it's a great and a classy event because she's a great and classy lady. So my name is Mike Fiffick, and I'm the managing partner of Fiffick Law Group. My law firm is located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania and suburban Philadelphia. And I am joined by my good friend and esteemed colleague, Wayne Hassey. Wayne, tell everybody a little bit about yourself and your firm.
All right. Managing partner of McGuire Schneider Hassey, located primarily in Columbus, Ohio, but serving all of greater Ohio and loving and enjoying it every day.
So Wayne and I, we know one another very well, good friends, good colleagues for many years. And one thing that we both share with one another is that we both have done a lot of estate planning engagements. I would say that each of our firms probably handles in excess of $1,500 estate planning engagements on an annual basis. And over the last 10 years, we've easily done in excess of 15, almost 20,000 estate planning engagements. So there really isn't a family situation under the sun that we haven't seen, that we haven't planned for. And our firms have a real depth of experience in doing estate planning, whether it's wills, powers of attorney, healthcare directives, trusts of all different kinds, planning for special needs children, and all different kinds of life situations. Both of our firms are pretty dedicated and have a pretty heavy practice focus on estate planning. And that's what we're here to talk to you about tonight. So very briefly, I'll tell you what the agenda is for this evening. We're going to talk a little bit about why you should prioritize estate planning, what happens whenever you don't have a will or some other estate planning tool. And we're going to talk about some, what I like to call no will nightmare situations. And we're going to speak to your situations, very common family situations, and talk to you specifically about what happens to your family whenever you pass away without a will. So we like to say estate planning is misunderstood and underappreciated. And here's really why. I would bet that if we were able to send a survey out over this Zoom, both Wayne and I are technologically not advanced enough to actually do that, or we know it's possible. If we sent this survey out and asked you one question, what's most important to you? I can guarantee you that the vast majority of you would say that your family is the number one most important thing in life. I know for Wayne, family is really important for him. He's a good family man, 2 kids, do a lot of stuff together, right, Wayne?
Well, and of course, the same is true for Mike. And, when you're doing all that stuff every day, all that stuff that life brings to you, the good and the bad, everybody's so busy. They're doing all that great family stuff, but they're forgetting this one particular piece, Mike. What was the previous slide? That it's misunderstood and unappreciated. And it just simply is, because you can always procrastinate it. You can always just do it tomorrow because you're doing all that great family stuff. And I think one of our missions, right, Mike, is just to make sure that people make this the worthy priority that it is.
Absolutely. So the vast majority of us would say that our families are the most important things to us. But here's the reality. 2/3 of us don't actually have a will, don't have our estate planning put together. And what is estate planning other than taking care of your family? So forget about the phrase estate planning. Let's just say it's taking care of your family. And 2/3 of us don't get that done. So what we say versus what we do, 2 totally different things,
Two
right?
totally different things. And Mike, I always like to interject this here, right? What comes right after what comes right after family? It's taking care of maybe your small business, which is also an intricate part of your estate plan. So many of us will say families first, and maybe business is somewhere pretty close down the line, and yet we still haven't planned for it. So let's think about how we can plan for it today, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I guarantee you, out of the 1,500 people that are currently on this Zoom, if you're a small business owner, many of you are probably married to your business, right? So engaging in continuity planning, succession planning for your business, that's taking care of your business. And that is also taking care of your family. Here are some common myths that I think cause people to maybe delay taking care of their family and getting their estate planning done. One myth is you only need to plan if you have money. So untrue. In fact, the less money you have, the more important it is for you to get your estate planning done, because if you don't have your estate planning taken care of, it's rather expensive to fix things after you've passed away. And if you are a person of modest means, you have that much less to spend to fix and have something left over for your family. So this is really a tragic situation that we have to deal with.
That's right, especially because it can be, I know it's hard to believe, right? A lot of folks are still maybe pessimistic at this point. It can be easy. It can be inexpensive to plan your estate, to save your precious dollars, no matter how many you have or how few you have, to save them for your loved ones.
Right. Another myth, if you're married, that your spouse gets everything anyway, so you don't need to do any planning. Well, surprise, surprise, you're going to find out that that's not exactly the way things work out. That would be a wrong assumption in many, many states or provinces for our good friends north of the border, who it's very important for them to get their estate planning, just like everybody else. All of North Americans are in the same boat.
Mike, I know where this came from, right? I'm going to call this almost one of those nasty, urban legends, if you will. Sure, there are many instances where maybe the spouse does get everything, and that's all fine and good. But it's that assumption that it always applies to you and your circumstances that I think is all too often devastating. You just can't assume that you know.
You really can't. Another myth is that you don't have enough money to pay an attorney to get estate planning done. And hey, sometimes estate planning can be expensive to get done, but what Melissa's going to tell you is this really isn't a problem either. And she's going to allude to that a little bit later on. So 5 reasons why you really need to prioritize your estate planning. Number 1, you don't want to lose control of your assets. And let's just make sure that everybody understands that estate planning isn't talking about after you pass away only, right? Estate planning addresses while you're alive, right? And after you pass away. And so there are many instances when you can lose control of your assets while you're alive. But after you pass away, you've worked really hard for all of this money, and there might be some ground rules that you want to set in place. So guess what? If you get your estate planning done, you get to still have some measure of control over your assets. Your money, your rules, right? Your money, your rules. Another reason is not knowing the law. You may think that you know what the law is and what would happen to your assets after you pass away, but there are going to be some surprises for you. And I think we're going to cover some of them tonight. One of the surprises would be that your wife or your husband or your spouse is going to get all of the money anyway. That's just not really the case in many, many instances.
And Mike, let's emphasize here that, knowing the law, it's a tricky thing, right? I mean, we spent our whole careers being dedicated to it.
Right.
And it is oftentimes a moving target. And every situation can be complex. The laws can constantly change. So I just think there's so much assumptions out there about the law that it's again, fairly dangerous for everyone.
Absolutely. Don't ask ChatGPT. They oftentimes come up with the wrong answer. They call it hallucinating. It's going to give you an answer, but it just might make it up. And are you going to be able to tell when ChatGPT is actually right or when it's hallucinating the answer? Too risky. You don't want your family to have to rely on that. Third reason why you really need to prioritize your estate planning is, maybe your health fails, right? It's never expected. You are not expecting to have a sudden health event that would cause you to lose control of your assets, not be able to control your small business, not be able to manage your own affairs. You think that it's not going to happen to you, but we all know if you're in church on Sunday and you're praying for some people who have had some sudden health emergencies in their lives. So we know that it happens, and we know that happens to people who are close to us. So why can't it happen to you? You really need to be planning for that type of a situation. Don't leave your family in the lurch. And related to that is you fail to plan when you can, as opposed to when you can't. So now is really the best time to take care of your family, because tomorrow you might not be able to do it.
Well,
and go ahead, Wayne.
Well, Mike, I was just going to say, don't we get so many questions about folks that are questioning about loved ones' ability or capacity to make these plans, particularly later in life or maybe after some medical tragedy. And, you don't want to have to ask those questions about, hey, is it too late? Can this still be done? You just can't procrastinate it.
Right. Does mom and dad have enough capacity, or are they too confused because of dementia or some other type of a medical condition that they really don't really know what it is that they're signing? You feel almost like you're taking advantage of them to ask them to sign something that they have no idea what it says or how to read it. So it's really very tough situation to be involved.
And so, if you don't pay attention to 1 through 4, what do you end up with, Mike? You end up with number 5, chaos, stress, and anxiety in your family.
Absolutely. I have a situation right now where, mom did not get her will done. She had 6 kids. One of the things that she got to do, if she planned for her family, was pick which of her kids was going to handle her affairs after she passed away. She waived her right as an American to do that. So now the law says all of the kids have an equal right, and they don't get along. And so they can't agree amongst themselves who is going to take care of mom's affairs after she's passed away. Guess what? Mom died a year ago, and they still haven't begun the process of managing her affairs. And they just argue on the phone. I've literally been part of those arguments. It's just a terrible situation to be involved in. But if you don't have a will, Wayne and I are here to make you feel better about yourselves, because we're here to tell you, be of good cheer. The government has a will for you. It's called the law of intestate succession. So no problem. Don't need a will. I'm just going to rely on the government to take care of my family. Does that sound like a good plan to you, Wayne?
Well, of course, the words they speak for themselves, right? I mean, everyone listening here tonight knows what I can't even say it, right? What intestate succession is. It's very clear what's going to happen. Well, no, as Mike's about to tell you on this slide, it's very unclear in this modern world.
Absolutely. So nobody would trust the government to take care of their family, right? That's bonkers to even suggest. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that you should feel confident that the government is going to take care of your family like you would want them taken care of, right? And there are a lot of reasons why you shouldn't rely on the government's plan for your family. First and foremost, trust in government is at an all-time low. All you have to do is turn on the news or flip open the internet, and you're going to see all kinds of people who hate the government or don't have trust the government. So, hey, it's a bad situation right now with Americans and the government. Not a love affair going on there. In addition, the laws of intestate succession, and they might be called something slightly different in your state or your province. A lot of these laws were written many, many years ago. Wayne, I know that you looked into this a little bit. When have some of these laws of intestate succession been written?
Well, I wouldn't exactly say looked into it, Mike, but I mean, my
You probably asked ChatGPT.
I probably asked ChatGPT, but it is there's no doubt that these rules were literally written. I always throw out 1880s, and it's probably not much of an exaggeration. Sure, they've been tweaked over the years, but the root concepts are back from a very different time. Now, look, I get what the government did here. The government did what it had to do for the peaceful transition of assets and wealth, because almost 2/3 of people do not plan for it. So that had to be done. But if you had the opportunity to plan for it, why wouldn't you do that, particularly in this modern world? Look at Mike's examples here at the bottom of the times when this intestate succession thing doesn't address any of these circumstances.
Yeah, absolutely. The laws of intestate succession were written at a time in the 19th century when we defined the family differently, or that there were different assumptions about the families in general, what they were, the role of women in the workplace. In the 19th century, many women didn't work. They were only at home. And these laws were written in that backdrop. So they really don't reflect modern society in the way we do things and how we understand things. These days that what we have that the laws of intestate succession probably don't recognize, grandparents as primary givers of their caregivers of their children. In vitro fertilization didn't exist in the 19th century. Unmarried couples, same-sex marriage. None of these things were around when the laws of intestate succession were written. So you can't rely on them because they just don't reflect the modern society and modern assumptions. And plus, who wants to rely on what we oftentimes call the nanny state, right? The nanny state has to step in whenever we don't take care of our own stuff. And that's just a shame. We should be taking care of it. It's the right thing to do. So let's talk about some no-will nightmare situations. And these are situations in real life. I guarantee you this is either your situation or it's a situation of somebody that you know. And it's really helpful and helps you sort of put things in perspective a little bit about how important it is to get your estate planning done whenever you know what happens whenever you don't have your estate planning done. So first family situation, blended families. This is something that is very common. 50% of marriages end in divorce. People get remarried, oftentimes bringing kids in from a prior relationship. Well, the laws of intestate succession are not very helpful when it comes to this, because they oftentimes will require your estate to be divided between your surviving spouse and your kids, right? And not your stepkids. So your spouse is going to be dividing your assets with your kids. Think about if in a second marriage situation, again, not uncommon, one spouse moves into a house that the other spouse already owns, but they don't put the new spouse's name on the deed. And the person whose name is on the deed passes away, right? No will, maybe living in that house for 20 years together without ever putting the name on the deed. This is very, very common. Now that spouse is looking at having to perhaps sell the house in order to satisfy the 1/2 share of the estate that has to go to their deceased spouse's kids. Devastating potential situation.
Yeah, that's right, Mike. I think the important thing to consider with these blended families is to look through the looking glass as many different ways as you can. you have to consider yourself as the surviving spouse, and then also consider yourself as the deceased spouse. And think about how many children each spouse has had from prior relationships, how many children you have had in this current relationship. Because, Mike, right, if depending on how many children are currently had between the married couple, that also affects the math and the division of the assets, at least in many states and provinces, as I'm aware of. And again, all math, all division of property and assets and precious things that no one may be thinking of. You really got to sit down with a professional where you are and see how this all kind of interacts.
That's right. You could have a very complex situation if you've got a his, a hers, and then ours children situation in a blended family. So
that's a very good way to put it. Yes, it's a very good way to say it.
It can get complicated real fast. All right. No will nightmare situation number 2, unmarried couples, right? If you are unmarried and in a long-term relationship, right, the laws of intestate succession most likely say that the surviving person gets nothing, right? And if you don't already know this, Wayne and I are here to tell you, surprise, surprise, common law marriage is a myth. It doesn't exist anymore in most places.
Yeah, you just took the words from me. I was gonna call it. I was gonna put it on your earlier slide there, Mike. It is just a myth. Why is it a myth? Because at one point it was rooted in fact. Such a concept did exist. Now, as I understand it, almost every jurisdiction has eliminated it. So what happens with the unmarried couple? The survivor gets nothing. It ends up going to the survivors. Well, maybe they had children from a prior relationship. If not, it could go to the siblings. It could even go to the parents. And someone that's been in a loving, committed relationship for decades gets nothing.
Absolutely. This happened to a close friend of mine. He fell in love later in life. He didn't have any kids, was dating his fiance for many, many years, finally decided to pick a date to get married. 2 months before they were to get married, he literally dropped dead one afternoon after mowing the grass. And he didn't have a will. He hadn't put her name on any beneficiary forms. And she ended up getting nothing out of his estate. And I know that that's absolutely not what Paul would have wanted to have happen. So don't let that happen. Situation number 3, stepchildren. Again, very common. Lots of people have stepchildren. Guess what? The law of intestate succession does not recognize your stepchildren as your children for purposes of inheritance. I can't tell you, and Wayne, I'm guessing that you've had the same experience, how many people that you know who have stepchildren who have raised them from when they were very young, have very close relationships with them, and when you sit down to get their estate planning done, they want their children and their stepchildren to be treated equally.
Well, that's right. We know this is a common situation in today's world where there's not only full siblings, but there's half siblings, and they have been raised together since the time they were small children as just full-blooded loved ones. No distinction in anything that happened in the family unit. And then when this unfortunate time comes, the law tells you there's some distinction. It's offensive, but it's true and very problematic.
Yeah. I mean, the law says your stepchildren that you've loved all your life now have second-class citizen status, right? They're no longer equal under the eyes of the law. That's the last thing that you would want your stepchildren to be put into a situation like that. No will nightmare situation number 4, single parents. If you have listened to absolutely nothing, if you are asleep because we've put you asleep, wake up, because this is something really important for single parents to understand. Who is going to manage your affairs? Who's going to take care of your kids if you leave for work tomorrow and never come home? I hate to be so drastic, but hey, it's a reality, right? Single parents got to get your estate planning done to take care of those precious loved ones that you have in your life. What do you want to do? Leave it up to the courts to decide who's going to have your kids if the other parent is in the wind or not around or doesn't want to be involved with your kids? Do you want to leave the money that you have worked to save up for your children for your ex to manage for the kids? All of these are situations that could happen if you choose not to take care of your family by getting your estate planning done.
And,
Right?
you know, Mike, earlier we talked about the time and the pressure and the busyness. And I think we all know that there's a lot of single parents out there that they have it as tough as anybody, if not tougher, with pressures on their time and their resources. But boy, this one, if left unattended to, it's got disaster written all over it. That's how I feel.
Tragic. If you don't name somebody to manage your kids' assets, if you don't name somebody to be the guardian for your kids, there is going to be a court proceeding where a judge who you don't know, who doesn't know your kids, doesn't know your family, might have a bad disposition, maybe is having a bad day, makes a decision that is catastrophic for your family. You don't have to let that happen. Don't let it happen. Please don't let it happen. No will nightmare situation number 5, single, no kids, right? The natural inclination is, I don't need a will. Why do I need a will? I'm only taking care of myself. Well, that's not really the case. Maybe young people think I don't have a lot of assets, but for young people, maybe assets aren't the most important thing that they want to plan for. Maybe they've got digital assets. Maybe they've got information in their email or on their phones, whatever it is that they want to maintain as private or pass along. But a lot of young people also have jobs and assets and savings too. So single, no kids, maybe some people are single, no kids at age 55, at age 65, right? You got a plan, right? These are tough situations. There's no natural person to take over your affairs whenever you're single with no kids. It's a real conundrum that you leave for somebody to pick the pieces up after you're gone.
For the younger among us, we think this goes back to, well, I don't really have much money yet. And
I like it how Wayne says the younger among us, as if he's part of that group.
Perhaps. But of that set, whoever they may be, Mr. Siffick, it might be, I don't have that much money. I can do this later. Again, my word of the day, I can procrastinate this, but you know what? You get this will done, and then the next thing before you know it, you have gotten a couple of promotions, and you do have some assets, and you got to think about, are they going to go to your estranged siblings or to your best friend, or what in the world is going to happen? Make a plan.
Absolutely. So if you want to read more stories about this is a blog that's on my website. You can see the website right there. These are real life stories of the messes that we leave behind whenever we don't have our estate planning situations. And I add a little bit of humor to it because literally these quotes, this is as if whenever you don't get your estate planning done, this is what you're saying to your family, right? To your spouse, honey, I love you. I've left you completely in the lurch by never sharing the details of our finances with you. Good luck, right? That's the legacy that you want, right?
Mike, I love the last one, the find my asset game. Because Mike and I have all been involved in intestate succession probates, where it's just a nightmare trying to find the assets.
Absolutely. Right.
It's impossible. It strings it along and makes it more expensive. Well, hey, Mike, we got about 2 minutes to make a final impression on everybody. What do you say?
Yeah. So what a will does, it distributes you assets. You appoint somebody to handle your affairs. You appoint somebody to take care of your kids. You place age restrictions on your kids' ability to have access to the money that you leave them. You get to make gifts to anybody. It is your right as an American to make these choices for yourself. You don't have to rely on the government to control these things, right?
And Mike, just a will, I want everybody to know a will guarantees probate. That is not a bad thing. It collects your assets, pays your debt, and makes sure that your assets go where you need them to go. And then there are other alternatives which should intermingle with your will. You can use all of these tools. Go ahead and explain, Mike.
Yeah. So a will does not control certain types of assets. That would be assets that are titled jointly. So a bank account with somebody else's name on it, a deed with somebody else's name on it, or an account that is controlled by a beneficiary form like an IRA or a retirement account of some kind, or life insurance, right? So you can pass assets without a will to folks, but I'm here to tell you that it's not necessarily a good idea to rely on what I call DIY estate planning, meaning doing it without a will or a trust. Because again, you don't know what you don't know. It is very difficult to do contingency plans using a beneficiary form or a guarantee. They basically, people that do DIY estate planning are basically relying on everything working out perfectly the way they have it laid out on a beneficiary form. Well, guess what? Life isn't perfect. It throws curveballs all the time, right? But your will or a trust, if that's what you choose to use, can really be a place where you can put a lot of contingency plans in place when those types of things happen, when life doesn't work out perfectly.
I think the key is to use all of these tools with the benefit of counsel wherever you are, your state or province.
Yep, absolutely. We've talked about special situations. Again, children with special needs, super important to get some estate planning done because they really require special planning. You don't want to leave assets to a person who is receiving government benefits because it oftentimes will render them ineligible to continue receiving those benefits until they spend all of the money that you left them. And now all you've done is wasted your money. There is a way to leave that money in trust for those special members of your family so that they can benefit from it without impacting their eligibility for continued government benefits. Second marriages, also a special reason to get estate planning done because you cannot in a DIY situation plan to treat your respective children in a second marriage, right? Equally, right? If you rely on that, basically the survivor gets to make all of the decisions, including the decision to take all of the assets that he or she inherited from you and leave them to their kids and leave your kids nothing. Only through a will or a trust can you ensure that your plan to make sure that your assets eventually go to your own kids, his or her assets go to their kids. At the end of the day, that's the only way to get it done is through a will or a trust. Don't forget, we own lots of digital assets out there. This is sort of a new thing that we really need to recognize. And we really should be thinking about the disposition of these special digital assets, things in email accounts, social media accounts, things that you have stored on your laptop or your iPhone or a computer, your rewards points, all of these things should be incorporated into your estate plan. Very difficult to figure out what to do with all of these individually. That's a nightmare situation. And on average, Americans have over 100 accounts that are controlled by a username and password. Very likely, many of those are going to be something that has value to you, whether it's emotional value or dollar value. And you really need to be thinking about the disposition of those assets. And that's part of estate planning in the modern era. Very important. If you're going to get your estate planning done, here's what you really need to get. Your last will and testament, maybe a living trust. Those two are really what plans for your family after you've passed away. A living trust can also help in the event you become disabled or incapacitated while you're alive. A durable financial power of attorney, where you name somebody to manage your finances when you can't while you're alive. And a medical power of attorney to make decisions for you about your medical care when you're unable to do it yourself. And then also your last wishes in the event that you are at the end of life, you can make some decisions for yourself. And here's something important for you to understand, because I talked about this early on. One of the myths is that people don't get stuff done because they don't have enough money. Here's the price range for estate planning in general. It's going to be somewhere between $750 to $1,500 to get your estate planning done, to get a package, a basic will, a power of attorney for your finances, and a power of attorney for your medical decisions. That's about the range in North America to get that kind of work done. Might be a little expensive some places, might be more expensive in other places, depending on what you need. But that's sort of the price range that you should be looking for. But it doesn't have to cost you that much. So with that, Wayne, any final words?
I was just going to say, I hope we have convinced everyone to take a serious look at this issue. please visit with some licensed attorney in your state or province to understand your particular rights, your particular laws. Mike and I just feel strongly in our heart it's something that everyone who puts their family first should have done. So, Mr. Carruthers, with that said, can we pass it off to you?
Absolutely. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I see the emojis, the hearts, and the claps and everything that are going on. We all appreciate you sharing this valuable wisdom after practicing law for the number of years that both of you have and seeing what happens to a family. You know, I think you guys said it in almost these same words. You know, who are the people in your life that you love the most? Well, you're not getting a will for you, you're getting it for them. And I'm sure everybody can agree right now, after hearing what you all just shared over the last half hour, you see why people would be crazy to think that they could do all this on their own, right? And so I assume that every viewer right now is convinced why they need to get a will. And let me just be real and transparent. I know the nagging feeling of guilt, I would maybe say, that nagging feeling of not having my will done, because I didn't have it done for a long time. But guess what? This is what a will looks like, by the way. And I know what it's like because I have this in my possession. I know the peace of mind feeling that I now have. I felt like I was not a responsible husband or parent. I felt like I was just letting them down by not having it done. Now I've had it updated 4 times because we first got married, got a will done, got 3 kids. So I've got 3 boys, got updated. And so here's the thing. There's 3 barriers why I have found people don't have a will. Number 1, they don't know how to find a great estate planning attorney. Maybe they have a brother-in-law who's an attorney, but do you really want to use your brother-in-law and share all your private stuff with that person? Don't you want a third-party attorney that can handle this kind of thing? How do you find that person? People don't know. So when you're deer in headlights, you just kind of put it off and kick it down the road. Number 2, it's time. You know, do you have a day that you can take off of work to drive across town to sit in a law firm's office and sit down with an attorney and do all this stuff? But what if there is a way to be able to get it done where it's not cumbersome? It's quite frankly made very easy and quick. And number 3, the cost factor. You just explained the cost, you know, roughly $1,000 or more to get this done. So if you don't have a lot of money and you don't feel like, and you feel like you've got plenty of time, which we don't know, it's pretty arrogant to say that you know you're going to live a certain amount of time. You can get hit by a car tomorrow, right? But if you don't have a lot of money, do you want to spend $1,000 right now? Well, what if we can remove the time factor? What if we can remove the cost factor? And what if we can actually put you in touch with a Mike Fithick or a Wayne Hasse? Would you feel confident having guys like this do your estate planning with you and for you? I mean, that's what I got when I became a member of Legal Shield. And Legal Shield is a membership where you pay a monthly fee and you got access to a whole menu of services that are already paid for by that monthly fee, one of which is getting your will and estate planning stuff done. So when I got my will done and my power of attorney and my advanced medical directives, guess what? The savings from that alone paid for my membership for the next almost 4 years. And I went from never using an attorney in my entire life. Here it is. I've had a membership now for 24 years. I've used the services 78 different times for things big and small. Now, there is nobody that I know on this planet who can explain the value and how people can benefit by using a Legal Shield membership, not just to get your will and estate planning done, but for all the many things that come up in life so that you can do things in a more empowered way and get better outcomes in your life with no stress. And so I'm going to turn it over to Melissa Peters so she can share with you how the Legal Shield membership works.
Thank you, Mr. Carruthers, and thank you, Mr. Hasse and Mr. Fithick, so much for being on here with us this evening. Sitting here and listening to them for the last 30 minutes, like you said, Brian, is just, it's empowering to get that information. And I know that we have a lot of guests on the line here with us this evening, and I hope that you really did take that information to heart. I hope you really did listen to not only what Mr. Fithick and Mr. Hasse said, but also what Mr. Carruthers just said. And so I have the privilege of sharing with you a little bit about our company, Legal Shield. I've been involved in this company now for 24 years as well as Mr. Carruthers. And I tell you, it has been life-changing for us. This company, though, has been in business since 1972. We were created to make equal access to the justice system a reality, not just a phrase, not just words. And we're proud today to say that nearly 4.5 million members all across North America now have access to protect their rights in a way that unfortunately most of us are outpriced of. And so our mission to provide equal access, liberty, justice, equality, and opportunity that everyone deserves is something that we take very seriously. And we have these provider law firms like the FIFIC Law Group or the McGuire Schneider Hassey Group in Ohio there to take care of our members. The question we normally get is how? How in the world can we afford to have these types of law firms there to serve our members? And it's the collective buying power of millions. We, every month, have our members pay a small monthly fee that Mr. Carruthers was mentioning. And what we do is we take a percentage of those fees and we prepay these law firms to serve our members. And so it's that collective buying power of millions that gives us the affordability and the access to these law firms. Now, I want to start kind of and I guess reiterating and talking to you again about the will. As Mr. Carruthers mentioned, part of being a Legal Shield member is having that estate planning package. And it doesn't mean that it actually has to cost that $750 to $1,500. This is something that's included in our Legal Shield membership. How many of you agree with me that, especially now after hearing what Mr. Hassey and Mr. FIFIC said, that having your affairs in order is very important? They mentioned that 2 out of 3 households do not have their affairs in order. And listen, it's not because we don't love our families. It's not because we're not trying to be responsible. It can be costly. And so therefore, as a Legal Shield member, understand that it doesn't have to be costly. It doesn't have to be time consuming or complicated like the law would suggest. See, as a Legal Shield member, anytime that you want to start the process, it's as simple as tapping an app or dialing a toll-free number. What our members are able to do is have their wills, their living wills, their healthcare directives, their financial power of attorneys, all completed for them at no additional cost. It's included as a member. So no more stressing and guessing about this, no more worrying about the finances. We can get this done. We don't need to waive our rights and allow the government to step in and do that for us. Listen, our estate planning, our wills, is not about the dying. It's about those that we have left behind living, right? To have our wishes put in writing, our last love letter to them. Not only do we do the preparation, right, of those documents for our member first year, but as Mr. Carruthers mentioned, his life has changed over the years, right? And with that being said, we want to keep those documents updated, and we do annual updates for our members. So as life changes, so can our wishes, so can our documentation. And listen, our services are available to our members that are covered under our plan, ages 18 years of age and older. So that means maybe there's more than just 1 or 2 estate planning documents that are completed within our membership, within that household. And, you know, Mr. FIFIC did mention that sometimes, hey, we may need a trust, and we can do that also at a 25% discount. But that's not all that we do. For about $1 a day, with our legal family plan that we're speaking about here today, our members have a full package. We're able to actually get advice and consultation by our provider law firms. Anytime I ever have a question, concern, or issue, something in my gut said this doesn't feel right, or something in my mind says this isn't making sense, I have no more need for stressing, guessing, or finger crossed or Google decisions ever again. I can simply tap an app and say, I need advice on. You know, people tell me all the time, why would I prepay for a legal plan? I'm a good person, right? We think of legal as bad things, bad people, bad situations, but that's not the case. It's about living life. In situations where we say, can I, should I, what does that mean? Is that fair? I'm not sure how that works. Where do I start, right? These are questions that having access to law firms like Mr. FIFIC's law firm, like Mr. Hassey's law firm, we're able to simply tap an app and get our advice, know what our rights are, know what we should or should not do, what we can or cannot do. These are things that finally we're empowered to be able to do. They also can write letters and make phone calls on our behalf, because why? Well, sometimes having the law firm write a letter on their law offices of letterhead motivates people to pay attention to our situation. We review contracts and documents so we know what we're putting our good name to or understanding what those documents mean. And of course, we already mentioned, in life events, our estate planning, but we also help with traffic, right? Traffic ticket assistance, as well as if we're sued civilly or if we're audited by the IRS or CRA to our Canadian families, we have access to tax audit assistance. We also have 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, access for emergency situations. Listen, I dare say that most of us never had that privilege before. And listen, our rights do not stop after 5 p.m. holidays or weekends, and nor should our access. For you and for your family, and when I say family, I'm talking about you would be the primary member, your spouse or significant other, never married children up to the age of 26 living at home, or full-time college students that are living outside the home today. If you have guardianship of a child up to the age of 18, and Mr. Fiffick talked about special needs children and making sure we have a special plan for those special needs children. We will cover your physically or mentally challenged child, regardless of age, physically dependent on you and your home, for about $1 a day. So what I'd like to do right now, Mr. Carruthers, is turn it over to you for some closing remarks as we wrap up here this evening.
Well, as I listened to you explain the benefits of the full Legal Shield membership and all that it provides, of course, tonight was an estate planning and wills webinar. So that's that was one of the big factors when I saw this membership. I said, hold up, I don't have a will. I can save $1,000 by signing up for a month-to-month membership. That is not even $30 a month. I said, that's a no-brainer. And you know what the guy said? He said, not everybody gets a Legal Shield membership, but most smart people do. I'm like, well, I'm smart. So I got it. It just made sense. It was a no-brainer, which, by the way, means even if you didn't have a brain, it would still make sense, right? So, but I've had a few speeding tickets, and the attorneys went to traffic court for me a couple of times. I didn't even have to go. They went for me. I'm like, oh my gosh, I love Legal Shield. So here's what I would just submit to everybody. You buy a membership because you want to be empowered. You want to remove stress from your life. You want to make more empowered and counseled decisions because you were able to counsel with a lawyer that can help you to make those good decisions. There's an old saying, the rich get richer and the poor stay poor. It's because rich people use attorneys all the time, and poor people and middle class can't afford to. So if you live in America or Canada, if you don't know your rights, if you can't defend your rights, you might as well not have any rights.
Right.
So Legal Shield truly protects and empowers. And I just want to encourage every person that's watching this right now, get back with the Legal Shield associate that encouraged you to check out this information. Again, like Darnell said at the beginning, thank them for inviting you to hear this, but make the decision. Get the membership. It takes literally 3 minutes to fill out the form on the website. So with that, everybody, we appreciate your time tonight. God bless you and your families, your loved ones that you're here to learn about how to protect. And we look forward to really watching you enjoy a better peace of mind in your life. Have a good night.